The glass shattered against the floor, and every conversation in the bar stopped. Jack Carter didn't move. He sat at the counter, one hand still wrapped around the half-empty glass of cheap whiskey, eyes fixed on the amber liquid, as if the sound hadn't happened at all. 3 hulking reptilian mercenaries stood behind him, their scaled faces twisted in amusement. One of them, easily twice Jack's size, leaned down and hissed in a guttural voice, "Human, you're in my seat." Jack took a slow sip from his glass and set it back on the counter. He didn't turn around. The bartender, a grizzled insectoid with 4 arms, let out a quiet sigh and muttered, "Leave it. Scarn. He's not worth the trouble." Scarn ignored the warning. He reached over Jack's shoulder, grabbed Jack's drink, and poured it onto the floor. Oops. The bar erupted with laughter from the mercenaries' table. The patrons at the other end of the room watched silently, curious to see how the lone human would react. Jack stayed still calm, like he hadn't even noticed. One of Scarn's companions sneered. "Fragile little thing, aren't you? All bark, no bite, like every other human I've met." The bartender's secondary eyes shifted nervously toward Jack. He'd seen that stillness before, the kind of stillness that came just before something violent happened. "Scarn," the bartender warned again, "don't." Scarn shoved Jack's shoulder, knocking him off his stool. The human hit the ground hard, his glass rolling across the floor and stopping near the mercenary's boots. The room went silent. Everyone expected Jack to crawl away, maybe mutter something about not wanting trouble. Humans weren't fighters, not against species that could snap their bones with a single hit. But Jack didn't crawl away. He stood up slowly, brushing the dust from his jacket, and looked straight at Scarn. There was no fear in his eyes. That unsettled the mercenary more than he cared to admit. "You spilled my drink," Jack said, his voice level, almost conversational. Scarn laughed, a booming, guttural sound. "What are you going to do about it, little man?" Jack tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question. "I'm going to order another one, and then I'm going to make sure you regret touching me." The laughter from the mercenaries faltered. Something in his tone didn't sound like bravado. Scarn grinned, trying to regain the upper hand. "You'll regret talking to me like that." Jack took a single step closer, and for a split second, the mercenary felt a strange chill crawl up his spine. The bartender slowly backed away from the counter. He knew exactly what was about to happen. "Scarn," he muttered, "you're about to make the worst mistake of your life." The reptilian mercenary shoved Jack again, harder this time. Jack didn't move. He didn't stumble. He just smiled. It wasn't a smile of someone pretending to be confident. It wasn't even a smile of anger. It was a kind of smile that predators gave prey when they'd already decided how they were going to kill them. Every alien in the bar felt it. The shift in the air, the quiet certainty that something very, very bad was about to happen. And for the first time that night, Scarn realized that the human he thought was harmless might be something else entirely. Jack rolled his shoulders, as if loosening them up. "You should have left me alone," he said quietly. The bar stayed silent. Even the ones who'd been laughing moments ago were now staring at Jack, like they weren't sure what they were looking at anymore. Jack glanced at the shattered glass on the floor, then back at Scarn. "Now," he said softly, "I'm going to teach you what fragile really means." Scarn opened his mouth to laugh again, but for some reason, no sound came out. The reptilian mercenary had the sudden, unnerving feeling that he was no longer the predator in the room, and the human standing in front of him was about to prove why. Jack moved first. One moment he was standing still. The next his elbow drove back into Scarn's ribs with a sickening crack. The reptilian mercenary doubled over, stunned by the sheer speed and force of the strike. Before anyone could react, Jack grabbed the nearest glass bottle from the counter and smashed it across Scarn's jaw. The room erupted into chaos. Scarn's companions lunged at Jack, but he was already moving. He sidestepped the first, yanked the barstool off the floor, and swung it like a hammer into the alien's knee. Bone and cartilage popped with a sharp snap, and the mercenary howled, collapsing to the ground. The second attacker reached for Jack's throat, claws outstretched. Jack twisted, driving the jagged end of the broken bottle deep into the alien's forearm. A spray of dark blood hissed on the floor, and the alien recoiled, shrieking in pain. The onlookers were frozen. Humans weren't supposed to fight like this. Jack didn't fight with brute strength. He fought with brutal precision. Every move was efficient, decisive, aimed to disable. He used the bar itself like a weapon, smashing heads into tables, kicking chairs out from under attackers, turning every object around him into something lethal. Skarn roared, recovering enough to charge. His massive claws slashed through the air, but Jack ducked under the swing and drove his fist straight into the alien's throat. Skarn gagged, stumbling back, clutching his neck. Another mercenary rushed him from behind. Jack didn't even look. He hurled the broken bottle over his shoulder, catching the attacker square in the eye. The alien screamed, falling back, blood streaming down his scale face. The bartender had stopped polishing glasses. His many eyes were locked on Jack, the faintest look of grim understanding in them. The patrons whispered among themselves. He's too fast. He's too calculated. No, he's enjoying this. Jack flipped the table with one hand, sending drinks and plates crashing to the floor. The barrier stopped the last standing mercenary just long enough for Jack to grab a metal serving tray and fling it like a blade. It slammed against the alien's temple with a hollow clang. The mercenary crumpled. Skarn stumbled forward, blood dripping from his mouth, rage replacing caution. You'll die for this, human. Jack tilted his head slightly, his face unreadable. Try it. Skarn lunged. Jack stepped aside at the last second, caught the alien's arm, and used his own momentum to slam him face first into the edge of the bar counter. The sound of bone breaking echoed through the room. The reptilian fell limp to the floor. Silence. Jack stood in the wreckage, calm, unshaken, breathing evenly as if nothing had happened. Every alien who had been laughing minutes ago now stared at him with wide eyes, as if they'd just watched something unnatural. He looked at the bartender. Another drink. The bartender, hands trembling slightly, wordlessly poured whiskey into a new glass and slid across the counter. Jack picked it up, sat back on his stool, and took a slow sip. No one dared to move. The first murmur came from the far corner, a low voice that carried through the silent room. They said humans were weak. Another voice, softer. If that's weak, I don't want to see strong. Jack set his glass down, his expression unchanged. Behind him, Skarn's companions groaned on the floor, broken, humiliated, unable to stand. Jack didn't look back at them. It wasn't pride. It wasn't anger. It was something far worse. It was the certainty of a man who had already decided that if anyone else stood up, they wouldn't walk out alive. The biggest of the mercenaries, a towering brute with jagged horns and scaled armor plating across his shoulders, staggered to his feet. Blood dripped from his lip as he growled low in his throat, eyes fixed on Jack with murderous intent. Jack didn't move. He took another slow sip from his glass and set it down carefully on the counter. The brute bared his teeth. You think you've won? You're just a fragile animal pretending to be dangerous. Jack finally turned to face him fully. No, I'm a dangerous animal pretending to be fragile. The alien roared in charge, claws out, the floor shaking with every step. Jack waited until the last possible moment. Then he moved. He dropped low, sweeping his leg into the brute's knee joint. The alien's momentum carried him forward as his leg buckled, and Jack drove an elbow into his exposed ribs. The crack of breaking bones silenced every gasp in the room. Before the mercenary could recover, Jack hooked an arm around his massive neck and twisted sharply. The alien collapsed like a felled tree, crashing into a table that splintered under his weight. No one breathed. Jack stood over the fallen brute, chest rising and falling steadily, eyes cold and unflinching. A veteran alien soldier sitting in the corner, scars carved deep across his face, finally muttered under his breath. That wasn't fighting. That was killing. The words rippled through the crowd. Jack stepped over the unconscious brute and returned to his stool, grabbing his glass again. You all wanted to see what human could do, he said, his voice even, almost bored. Now you've seen it. The bartender finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. Never pick a fight with a human. They don't fight like the rest of you. They fight to end it. The remaining mercenaries, groaning and broken on the floor, didn't dare move. None of them even looked at Jack. At a distant table, one of the younger aliens whispered, "If one human can do that alone, what happens if there are hundreds of them?" No one answered. The bar, once full of laughter and casual insults, had turned into a tomb of silence. Jack drained the last of his whiskey, set the glass down gently, and gestured to the bartender for another. The insectoid barkeep poured without a word, sliding the drink across. Jack caught it, took a sip, and said nothing more. He didn't need to. Everyone present already understood. Humans weren't fragile. Fragility was just a mask they wore until the moment it came off. The fight spread faster than plasma fire. By the next morning, every corridor of Drelo Station buzzed with whispers about the lone human who had dropped 3 armed mercenaries without breaking a sweat. The story grew with every retelling. Some said Jack Carter broke bones with a single punch. Others swore he'd snapped the largest mercenary's neck like it was nothing. By midday, entire docking crews paused their work just to hear the story again. The mercenaries who'd started the fight stayed in the med bay, too ashamed to speak. No charges were pressed. No revenge was planned. They wouldn't go near Jack again. In the officers' lounge, a group of alien soldiers replayed the story, each version making Jack seem even more dangerous. One of them, an old war veteran with scars running down his face, muttered into his drink, "You can outgun a human, outnumber them, but once they decide to fight, you can't outlast them." Even the station security forces started looking at humans differently. They'd always been considered harmless travelers, short-lived, underpowered, too weak to matter. But now, no one could ignore the fact that a single unarmed human had dismantled 3 of the deadliest mercenaries in the sector with nothing but speed, precision, and sheer willpower. Captains of freighters and smugglers alike started telling their crews to avoid provoking humans. Soldiers who'd never feared any other race spoke quietly about what they'd do if humanity ever went to war. For the first time, alien warlords wondered if maybe humans weren't just survivors. They were predators waiting for the right moment to bare their teeth. Jack didn't stick around to enjoy the attention. He left the bar without fanfare, paid his tab, and walked out into the crowded docks. The station swallowed him up as if he had never been there. But everyone who had seen that fight would remember. The bartender polished the counter long after Jack left, the room still silent, even with new patrons coming and going. When someone finally asked about the human, the bartender only said one thing. Fragile? No. Humans just let you believe that until it's too late. Across the station, the tale became legend. By nightfall, even those who hadn't been there told it as though they had. The story became a warning, a quiet reminder that the short-lived species from the distant blue planet wasn't harmless at all. The galaxy had always called humans weak. That night, in a forgotten bar on Drelo Station, they learned that fragility can be the deadliest disguise of all.